Hello and welcome. My name is Aayush Ailawadi and you're watching Primetime.
And I'm Tamanna Inamdar. Let's take a look at the top headlines.
A Saubhagya scheme to provide electricity connections to all families by March 2019. The centre will fund the 16,300 crore rupees outlay.
Prime Minister Modi sets up a 5-member Economic Advisory Council headed by Bibek Debroy.
Monday blues on Dalal Street as benchmark slumped to a 4-week low. The Nifty falls below 9,900. The Sensex sheds 300 points.
Harsh Mariwala says small and medium businesses were worst hit by demonetization. The Marico chairman adds that GST impact was far more severe than anticipated.
The Reserve Bank of India prohibits banks from holding more than 10% stake in deposit-taking NBFCs. Housing finance companies are exempted from the cap.
Jaguar Land Rover is on the prowl, eyes luxury brands to diversify its portfolio. The Tata Group company is also weighing buying technology companies. That's a Bloomberg exclusive.
And trouble mounts for Karti Chidambaram. The enforcement directorate attaches assets worth over a crore rupees. His father hits back, calls the attachment order crazy. All right, let's start off with the top story. Amidst the slowdown in the Indian economy and growing calls for economic stimulus, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has revived the UP-era Economic Advisory Council. Niti Aayog member Bibek Debroy will be the chairman of this council.
Now, former Finance Secretary Ratan Watal has been appointed as the member secretary. Economists Surjit Bhalla, Ratan Roy and Ashima Goyal will constitute the 5-member council. The council will advise the Prime Minister on issues concerning the macro economy.
Now, the last chairperson of the Economic Advisory Council, C. Rangarajan, who's also a former governor of the Reserve Bank of India, joins us on the phone line. Mr. Rangarajan, thank you so much for joining us on BloombergQuint. Now, well, as the last chairperson of the Economic Advisory Council, what I wanted to start off by asking you was, what does this really mean when it comes to this particular action?
Well, I first of all welcome the constitution of the Economic Advisory Council. I think the choice of the chairman and the members is appropriate. Well, the most important thing is for the Economic Advisory Council to act as an independent body which can offer advice to the Prime Minister on matters of importance to the economy. So at the present moment, I think the slowdown in growth is the most pressing issue before the country. And therefore, I'm sure that the council, the chairman and the members will put their minds together and offer advice to the Prime Minister as to what can be done to revive the economy.
Well, Mr. Rangarajan, having worked on the erstwhile Economic Advisory Council, how much of the formation of this council is a reaction to the slump in growth over the last few quarters?
I think the council will probably meet and discuss on a number of issues that need to be attended to. By and large, I think the most important thing is to revive the private investment, because public investment, that is public capital expenditures, have shown an increase, and maybe there is still some scope for enhancing it. But what is really important is to revive private investment, which has been steadily falling. And for that, there are a number of areas that one needs to look at. Close monitoring of the stalled projects is a low-hanging fruit. And I think critical analysis of the stalled projects, both in the public and the private sectors, can lead to some immediate benefits. There is also the issue of how banks can be revived, how they can be recapitalized quickly to enable them to lend, because that is also very important. Because merely lowering the policy rate will not help, because the banks themselves must have the capacity to be able to lend, and therefore recapitalization is important. And perhaps linked to it is how to raise resources for it. Perhaps a disinvestment of a larger order may be in place. And finally, I do think that the Economic Advisory Council, along with the ministries and so on and so forth, must engage themselves in close consultations with the various industry groups, with various sectors of the economy, find out the problems that are coming in the way of private investment and try to find solutions to them.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rangarajan, for speaking with us at BloombergQuint. Now, the Prime Minister has also launched the Sahaj Bijli Har Ghar Yojana, Saubhagya, to provide power to all families in India. The aim is to ensure that each and every village in the country is electrified by 2019. The centre has set aside 16,320 crore rupees for the project, with a gross budgetary support of 12,320 crore rupees.
बिना बिजली के जिंदगी कैसी होती है ये समझना हमारे आपके उस व्यक्ति के लिए जरूरी है जिसके पास बिजली का कनेक्शन है। बिना बिजली वाले इन घरों में जब बिजली का कनेक्शन पहुंचेगा तभी उनका भाग्य चमकेगा, तभी उनके लिए सौभाग्य होगा। प्रधानमंत्री सहज बिजली हर घर योजना यानी कि सौभाग्य योजना के तहत सरकार देश के हर ऐसे घर, चाहे वो गांव में हो या शहर में हो या झुग्गी झोपड़ी में हो, दूर दराज वाले इलाके में हो, उस घर को बिजली कनेक्शन से जोड़ने का आज हम संकल्प करके आगे बढ़ते हैं।
Sajid Mangat is standing by with the details. Sajid, how many villages will be covered in the ambitious project?
You know, Tamanna, you need to go look at the background of the entire scheme and when it originated. The government already has a scheme called Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Gram Jyoti Yojana, under which they were planning to electrify nearly over 18,000 villages. Which have over a few last 3 years, they have been able to electrify over 14,400 villages. So roughly around 2,981 villages are going to be electrified over the next 2 years, because that was the deadline. March 2019 was the deadline for electrification of all these villages, so that all India becomes electrified. As we speak, nearly 4 crore villages, 4 crore households are yet to be electrified in these 2,981 villages, and that's the target which is been done. So the current Yojana which has been announced, Pradhan Mantri Sahaj Bijli Har Ghar Yojana, it plans to electrify nearly 23% of the outstanding villages which is there. And that is going to be done over the next 15 to 18 months. They're targeting December 2018 as the deadline for completing the electrification. It's interesting to note that most of the villages are situated in some of the northern and eastern states. Tamanna.
All right, Sajid, thanks so much for that analysis. Well, the BJP has set its sights on the 2019 polls. In its national executive meet today, the Prime Minister urged party members to go beyond conventional politics and cater to the needs of the people. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley defended the government's bold note ban move, saying the allegations made by the Congress party are completely baseless.
भारतीय जनता पार्टी केवल जो कन्वेंशनल राजनीति है, चुनाव लड़ना, चुनाव जीतना, वो एक्टिविटी तो चलती रहेगी, राजनीतिक दलों का एक अंग है, लेकिन उसके माध्यम से जो विश्वास और सत्ता मिली है उसको एक साधन माने। राजनीतिक संगठन के नाते चुनाव एक उसका अंग है, लेकिन वी शुड टेक द बीजेपी बियॉन्ड इलेक्शन and make it an instrument of mass participation so that we can improve the quality of life of people.
And also, let's remind you, that's what we're talking about in Primetime debate this evening. The big power push, the Economic Advisory Council, on a day when the BJP's National Executive meet took place. How does it all tie into the big 2019 plan? But let's move on now. It's a weak start to the new trading week. That's the gist of today's action on Dalal Street. Benchmark indices hit a 3-week low as they incurred losses for the 5th straight session. Both the Nifty and Sensex ended with losses of just under 1% each. Neeraj Shah joins us now with all the details. Neeraj, Indian markets saw a sharp fall today. What was the reason?
That's right. Indian markets did crack, albeit off the lows of the day is where they ended, but did crack about 1% on a stable global day, I must add. The rest of the world markets weren't as bad, but the indices cracked about 1% apiece. The Nifty Bank too, about 200 points down, and the broader markets too corrected. So the NSE Mid Cap Index or the BSE Small Cap Index fell down at 1.5% to 2% apiece. So that wasn't the greatest of days. India VIX surged and surged quite a bit. So look at that uptick there, about 4% uptick to 13.34, so comfortably above the 13 mark is the India VIX. Commodity stocks were under pressure. That was the order of the day, really. Tata Steel, Ambuja. In addition to banks, commodities were the other basket of stocks that fell quite a bit in the session today. Moving on to the broader end of the spectrum, a lot of slightly weak names fell. So if you look at the Indiabulls group, for example, be it Indiabulls Housing Finance, which is actually not weak, but look at Indiabulls Real Estate, look at Indiabulls Ventures, and don't just look at the falls in today's session, but look at the falls over the last 3 or 4 days. These stocks have been correcting and correcting thick and fast. So not a great day for a lot of these weaker hands in the session today. Well, it was a good day for one company, and that is Capacite Infra. New listing, again, off the highs, but you would argue that at 92 points, about 37% premium on a listing, it's actually turned out to be a rather good listing for the new kid on the block. It was a really good day, though, for one stock, and one stock alone, and that's Shoppers Stop. The stock was up about 19% in the session, and mind you, it started off about 15% higher, went on as the day went by to close at the 20% circuit, despite the fact that the markets were off in the session today. And the Amazon deal and the belief that it will actually lead to some bit of gains in operations and in profitability over the course of the next few months, quarters, years, led to this one doing what it was doing. Last but not the least, a couple of names which I should point out. One of them is Infibeam, cracked intraday to the tune of almost 35%, recovered a bit, but only to close about 16 percentage points lower. So that was a big crack for Infibeam. And Coffee Day, wherein the promoter agreed or accepted that to undisclosed IT income of 650 crores, and I think that stock corrected about 7.5% in day trade today. So all in all, a bad day of trade. Let's hope things stabilize in this expiry week tomorrow.
Like we told you earlier, Shoppers Stop was a star performer in trade today after Amazon's investment arm said it was looking to pick up 5% stake in the retailer. Now, shares worth 180 crores will be allotted on a preferential basis. The deal will enable Shoppers Stop to open 5 new stores in the second half of the fiscal year, taking that number up to 15 over the next 5 years. All 400 of its brands will also be hosted on Amazon.in. BloombergQuint's Alex Matthews spoke to Shoppers Stop MD Govind Srikhande to understand the deal matrix.
I think we are on a path of continuous growth, and we believe that the Indian retail, the physical side as well, is still underpenetrated. So I think this will help us to further invest more, and we are going to open about 5 stores in the second half of this year, and there's a plan of another 15 stores for the next 4-year period.
So most of it is going to be used to bolster the infrastructure.
Expand the footprint as well.
And this has nothing to do with the investment that you talked about with regard to Hypercity. That's a completely different story altogether.
Absolutely different, correct.
What's the update on that?
So Hypercity, as you're aware, we have been talking to multiple investors over the last 24 months period to bring in investments into that business. As of now, we are in, I would say, the final lap of discussion with a few players, and I believe that we are confident of announcing the next step in about 4 weeks' time.
Well, so Shoppers Stop was that one bright spark in the markets, but overall, markets are fairly priced. That's the word coming in from Nilesh Shah of Kotak Asset Management. Furthermore, speaking about earnings growth, he states that the September quarter has definitely seen some uncertainty, but a complete stock can only be taken after the festive season is over.
There's no doubt that markets are fairly priced. In fact, they're a little bit above fair price, but with macro which is different in 2017 versus 2008, and the hope for the future that things can be better, I think we can't say that markets are expensive or bubble. They are little above fair value, and either a time or price correction or both will kind of adjust it. For FY19, for our portfolios, large cap, mid cap, small cap, The range is from 12% for large cap to about 18-19% for mid caps. But this is for the FY19 growth, because FY18 is now just 6 months away. And clearly there is little bit of uncertainty in the September quarter. June quarter was impacted due to GST implementation by destocking. The restocking should occur for the festival season from Dussehra, Durga Puja, Diwali. There's a mixed signal coming. We have to wait for full festival season to play out in order to take a call as to what's happening in September quarter.
Now, the rupee breached the 65 mark against the dollar, tracking losses in the equity markets. The Indian currency fell 0.5% to its lowest level since March 24th. The fall comes amidst the recent outflows of foreign funds, both from equities and bonds, due to ongoing geopolitical tensions.
Meanwhile, State Bank of India has lowered its minimum balance requirement for savings account to 3,000 rupees from the current 5,000. Pensioners and minors are, of course, exempt from having that minimum average balance. In April this year, SBI had reintroduced charges on non-payment of monthly average balance. Failing to maintain a minimum balance would attract a fine of 100 rupees plus taxes.
The Reserve Bank of India amended rules on financial services provided by banks. Now, lenders will not be allowed to hold more than 10% stake in a deposit-taking non-banking financial company. Vishwanath Nair of BloombergQuint joins us on the show. Vishy, if you could take us through what these changes really mean and what this development means.
Right, Aayush. So what the RBI is saying here is that a bank cannot hold more than 10% in any deposit-taking NBFC, with the exception that it is in a housing finance company. So only housing finance companies will be allowed with a higher stake owned by banks. Apart from this, the RBI is also saying that banks cannot invest in REITs or InvITs for more than 10% of their unit capital, as well as cannot be in the broking business for the commodity derivative segment. Now, essentially, the first norm, which is about the 10% stake, is something that is important for the markets, because a deal which has been in the works for the past year or so, Shriram and IDFC Bank, that merger is likely to be impacted, or at least that is what a consultant who spoke to BloombergQuint exclusively told us, that likely there is likely to be some kind of impact on this deal, because Shriram Transport Finance, which is a deposit-taking NBFC of the Shriram Group, is supposed to continue as an individual company, as a separate company outside the bank, but under the overall IDFC Limited umbrella. So that is likely to be under problem, because the RBI will not allow that NBFC to continue as a separate entity. That is what we are understanding here.
Thanks for that, Vishwanath Nair there. Now, troubles continue for former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram's son, Karti Chidambaram. The Enforcement Directorate has attached assets worth 1.16 crore rupees of Karti Chidambaram and a firm linked to him in connection with its money laundering probe in the Aircel Maxis deal. The Enforcement Directorate said that it has issued a provisional attachment order under PMLA, that's the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. The firm under focus is Advantage Strategic Consulting Private Limited. The ED says that the company was controlled by Karti through another person. Reacting to this development, P. Chidambaram called the attachment order a crazy mixture of falsehood and conjecture. He also said that he will not be intimidated by the ED action on his son. BJP MP Subramaniam Swamy also reacted to the development, saying Chidambaram violated FIPB laws to provide clearance for the Aircel Maxis deal.
While the BJP seems to be eyeing the 2019 elections, Rahul Gandhi kickstarted his Gujarat campaign by attacking Prime Minister Modi on unemployment as well as his digital agenda. He questioned the Prime Minister on the 2 crore jobs that the Prime Minister had promised during his 2014 campaign. He also mentioned that farmers cannot go digital as the country still isn't developed enough to deal with the transformation from cash to mobile.
प्रधानमंत्री जी ने कहा था कि 2 करोड़ युवाओं को वो हर साल रोजगार दिलवाएंगे। आपने 2 करोड़ युवाओं को रोजगार देने का वायदा किया था। आप हमें बताइए, इस साल आपने कितने युवाओं।
Well, Home Secretary Rajiv Maharshi has taken over as the Comptroller and Auditor General of India today. His tenure will continue till August 7th, 2020. Maharshi, a 1978 batch retired IAS officer of Rajasthan cadre, completed his 2-year fixed term as the Home Secretary last month. Before his appointment as the Home Secretary, he worked as Economic Affairs Secretary and Chief Secretary of Rajasthan.
We're moving on to some top international news. Well, Angela Merkel has won a fourth term as German Chancellor, with her Conservative bloc clinching 32.9% of the vote. But it wasn't a comfortable victory. Board chairs of both the main party, CDU, and its erstwhile ally, Social Democrats, got affected severely, while the right-wing party Alternative for Germany, AfD, saw a rise in its vote share. The rise of the far-right movement comes on the back of its stance against immigration. 6 parties are now set to enter the lower house for the first time since 1953.
We must not forget that we have had a very challenging parliamentary period. And that's why I'm happy, together with you, that we have achieved the strategic aims of our electoral campaign. We are the strongest party with the CDU and CSU. We have received the responsibility to create a government, and no government can be created without us.
Members of the CDU who are unhappy, still unhappy with the Chancellor's immigration policies, and they felt liberated or free to express their displeasure by voting for AfD, which is really what a vote for AfD represents, and that's why you see that little bit of a drop for her in the polls from where she was in the polls, and a little bit of a bump for AfD.
She's been knocked down a peg. She's still very strong, but again, not as strong as she was a week or so ago. You thought maybe the worst was over, maybe the real populist radicals had peaked as a force. Now I'm not sure, and God forbid that there's any kind of fresh terrorism in Germany or wherever. I think these radical parties will demand of their leaders a very vigorous response.
It has to cope with the huge inflow of immigrants we have seen over the last 2 years, which is now declining, but still this is an ongoing issue, and this has caused some frustration with the Grand Coalition parties altogether. I mean, they lost almost 14 points altogether, and has strengthened the borders on the left and on the right.
Now, Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has called for elections a year early and said that he would dissolve the lower house of parliament on Thursday. Speaking to the media today, Abe unveiled an $18 billion economic package. He also announced a slew of economic measures, including more education funding. Abe stressed the need to keep up the pressure on North Korea amidst the rising geopolitical tensions in the Korean Peninsula. Voting is expected to take place on October 22nd, though there has not been a formal announcement yet.
Now, following the London licensing body's decision not to renew Uber's license to operate in the city, the tech company has now issued an apology. Uber's chief executive wrote an open letter admitting that the company got things wrong and that it apologizes for the mistakes that it has made. London's Mayor Sadiq Khan says he's pleased that the Uber executive has acknowledged the issues that it faces in London. In what can be seen as an attempt towards damage control, perhaps, Khan also said that Uber has brought unfair pressure on Transport for London, employing an army of PR experts and lawyers to defend its case.
Well, sometimes Aayush, just saying sorry fixes a lot of things. I don't know if it will.
Is it too late now to say sorry?
We don't know, but it's not too late to join us on Primetime Debate coming after a very short break. We're talking about all the big policy measures today. Saubhagya, the new Economic Advisory Council, and how it contributes to the government's power push ahead of the 2019 election.
Sounds like an interesting show. Stay tuned to BloombergQuint.